The grand stage of America's Got Talent shimmered under the bright lights as a tiny figure slowly stepped into the spotlight. It was a 10-year-old Filipino girl named Micaela, wearing a simple white dress that made her look angelic and pure. Her small hands gripped the microphone tightly, and she glanced nervously at the vast audience before her. The crowd fell silent, sensing the innocence and determination radiating from her. Simon Cowell leaned forward, intrigued, and asked in his usual calm tone, "What will you be singing tonight?" Her soft voice replied, "I'll be singing Nessun Dorma." A wave of surprise rippled through the audience. An opera song, one of the most challenging pieces even for professionals. The music began, slow and powerful, filling the hall with a majestic tone. Micaela closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. Her voice, unexpectedly rich and controlled, soared through the air like a trained soprano. Each note was crystal clear, resonating deeply with everyone in the room. Judges exchanged amazed glances. No one could believe such a powerful, mature voice came from a 10-year-old. The audience listened in stunned silence, captivated by her poise and passion. As she sang, her confidence grew. Her trembling hands steadied, and her expression turned from nervous to commanding, as if she belonged to that stage all along. The lights reflected off her face, highlighting her emotion and intensity. By the time she reached the chorus, the energy in the room had completely shifted. The audience was spellbound. Micaela wasn't just a little girl singing opera, she was an artist telling a story through music. When the last note echoed through the hall, every person knew they had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. As Micaela continued her breathtaking performance, the theater was completely captivated. The judges sat motionless, their eyes locked on the young singer as her voice soared through the opera's most difficult passages. Simon Cowell leaned back in awe, his usual critical expression softening into one of disbelief and emotion. Sofia Vergara's eyes shimmered with tears, while Heidi Klum pressed her hand over her heart, visibly moved by the child's powerful yet angelic tone. The camera panned across the audience, faces filled with astonishment, some even crying, realizing they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. Every note Micaela sang carried raw emotion, as if she had lived the story of the song herself. Her small frame seemed almost too fragile to hold such a grand voice, yet her control was flawless, her delivery pure and passionate. The music built higher and higher, and the audience held their breath, afraid to even blink. The orchestra swelled behind her, complementing her perfect pitch as she prepared for the climactic high note that few adults could reach with such precision. When she finally hit that note, the sound was so powerful and pure that it echoed throughout the hall, shaking everyone's hearts. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, standing to their feet in unison, clapping and shouting her name. The judges joined in the standing ovation, unable to hide their amazement. Simon's eyes glistened, he wiped a tear quickly, hoping no one noticed, but the cameras caught it all. Micaela, seeing the reaction, smiled shyly through her own tears, her dream moment unfolding before her eyes. The stage light sparkled above her, reflecting the emotions in the room, a mix of shock, pride, and pure admiration for a little girl who had just delivered a once-in-a-lifetime performance. As the final moments of the song approached, Micaela's voice grew even stronger, filling the massive theater with an emotional intensity that few could describe. Her eyes closed as she poured her entire heart into the last verse, her hands trembling slightly but her tone unwavering. The orchestra reached its peak, and Micaela lifted her head high, hitting the final, soaring note of Nessun Dorma with breathtaking power and clarity. The note seemed to hang in the air for eternity, echoing through the silent hall before fading into complete stillness. Then, suddenly, the entire audience erupted into thunderous applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping and shouting her name, their cheers echoing from wall to wall. Some audience members were crying openly, completely overwhelmed by what they had just witnessed. The camera zoomed in on the judges' table. Sofia had tears running down her cheeks, Heidi was speechless, and even Howie stood with his hands raised in disbelief. Simon Cowell, known for his tough exterior, was visibly moved. He smiled softly, shaking his head as if trying to process what he had just heard. For a few seconds, he couldn't even speak, he simply looked at Micaela with admiration. Then he stood up, leading the standing ovation, clapping slowly but powerfully, his eyes glistening with emotion. Micaela looked around, overwhelmed by the sight of thousands cheering for her. She pressed her small hands against her heart and began to cry tears of joy. The stage lights glowed warmly around her, making the moment feel magical, almost unreal. In that instant, it was clear to everyone, she hadn't just sung a song, she had touched every soul in the room with her voice. As the cheers continued to echo across the theater, Micaela stood frozen in disbelief, her tiny hands covering her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. Golden light flooded the stage, making her look like a young star in the middle of a dream. The judges were still standing, clapping and smiling, unable to hide their emotions. Simon Cowell looked at her for a long moment, his expression soft and full of pride. He leaned toward his microphone and said gently, "You have no idea how special that was. I've never seen a 10-year-old command the stage like that." The audience roared even louder, chanting her name, Micaela. Micaela. Simon then turned to his fellow judges, nodding slowly with a knowing smile. The crowd sensed what was about to happen. The music swelled softly in the background as Simon's hand moved toward the golden buzzer. The audience gasped and held their breath. And then, he pressed it. In an instant, the iconic buzzer sound echoed through the hall, and a storm of golden confetti exploded from above, raining down like magic. Micaela fell to her knees, overwhelmed by emotion, laughing and crying at the same time as the glitter surrounded her. The audience screamed with joy, waving and clapping, while the judges stood and applauded her courage and talent. Simon walked up to the stage, brushing confetti from his shoulders, and knelt beside her. "You are a miracle, Micaela," he said warmly, giving her a gentle hug. "This is just the beginning for you." The golden lights reflected in her tears as she looked up, speechless, surrounded by a sea of gold, a little girl who had just turned her biggest dream into a once-in-a-lifetime reality. Backstage, Micaela ran into her parents' arms, sobbing tears of happiness as golden confetti still clung to her hair and dress. Her mother held her tightly, whispering, "You did it, Anik," while her father wiped his own tears, unable to stop smiling. The sound of the cheering audience still echoed faintly from the stage, and the crew members passing by clapped and congratulated her. Simon Cowell appeared from behind the curtains, smiling warmly as he approached. "You were incredible out there," he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That voice, it's a gift. Never stop singing." Micaela nodded shyly, her face glowing with pride and disbelief. The camera captured the heartwarming moment, a family huddled together, crying and laughing, with Simon standing beside them. Golden flakes floated around as the lights softly dimmed, creating a cinematic, dreamlike atmosphere. In the background, the audience could still be heard chanting her name. She looked toward the stage one last time, her eyes glimmering with hope and gratitude. During her post-performance interview, Micaela said softly, "I just wanted to make my family and my country proud." Her voice trembled with emotion, but her smile was radiant. The host, touched by her humility, told her, "You didn't just make them proud, you made the world proud." As the camera zoomed out, it showed Simon watching from a distance, his expression filled with admiration. Golden confetti sparkled under the lights as Micaela waved at the crowd through tears of joy. The screen slowly faded to black with her voice echoing in the background, a voice that had not only won a golden buzzer but had touched millions of hearts across the world.